You know, I was about to intro this segment with hello, BillWhittle.com members, but this segment isn't members only anymore because our members said, hey, you got to show everybody this stuff. So I question their judgment, but I'm glad our formerly members only content is reaching a wider audience. Everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is your lightning round. That's right. Artisanally selected, steel cut headlines from only the very finest news sources plucked by hand in the early dawn hours.
At the peak
And
of
if you
their
believe
ripeness?
that, you're going to love the rest of this stuff. All right, let's see. We're going to go to Bill for our first headline. This
Oh
one is
no!
this one is from the Seattle Times. Trump asks for military tanks on the mall as part of a grandiose 4th of July event. Sounds pretty scary, doesn't it? They say that like the implication is that this is somehow a bad thing to have
Well,
tanks in a parade. Oh, and I should say military tanks, just
oh,
in case there
military
was any
tanks. No,
confusion.
Not their
that's
normal
see,
civilian
now,
tanks.
That's
Yeah.
that's the worst kind.
Yeah.
Well, I think anybody who's had any chance to listen to NPR understands that this is Donald Trump's attempt to take the presidency. And I don't think we should countenance it. I'm serious about that. And by the way, parenthetically, reminds me of a story right after 9/11 where an airline pilot was, he's in his uniform, he's got his security badge, all of this, he's got all his clearance, and he's going through security. This actually happened, and they found a pair of nail clippers with a little fold-out file thing like that, and they confiscated it from the pilot. And the pilot said, "Why on earth would you take that away from me?" And the TSA guy said, "Because you might use it to attempt to take control of the aircraft."
The pilot.
Yeah. And that's about the same response that this thing is. Scotty was talking about this earlier in our pregame show. That tanks reported on the mall in Washington. Look, I don't think that an American parade should be an exclusively military event as it is in the Soviet Union and China and all the rest. But this idea that the military must be excluded from celebrating in the freedom of the country that they give their lives to protect somehow strikes me as just a little bit less than the actual Nazism that these people on the left are so desperately waiting to find some evidence of.
Yeah, you know what? And it's not like we declared independence on July 4th, 1776, and the Brits went, "Oh, right then, so long." No, we we then had to fight a war with a military for a few years after that. So yeah, I think a military presence at an Independence Day parade is it's probably okay. All right, Scott. Next headline is for you. U.S. soccer star Megan Rapinoe says she's, quote, not going to the effing, well, that part's not a quote, White House if the women's team wins the World Cup. Just in time for Independence Day. What's going on with our sports stars? Like, it's another one of these stories, Scott.
Well, first of all, let me just say I hope that the women's national team does win the World Cup.
Absolutely.
And I think that Team America is one of the greatest soccer teams, obviously, in the world in the last decade, and they continue to do very well. And so here's hoping that even Megan has a wonderful day on that day when they win that match. This has become kind of tiresome now when it comes to turning down invitations to the White House. Having been to the White House once myself, not at the invitation of the president, but at the invitation of, I think it was like his chief economic advisor at the time. I forget what his title was. I went there and I had lunch in the little, the Navy runs the cafeteria, so to speak, in this, I forget what the name of the room is, but this is a lovely wood paneled room in the White House. And it was really cool to go to the White House. And I'm thinking, I don't care who the president of the United States is. If you get a chance to go to the White House, go to the White House. Yeah. I mean, what's the big deal? It doesn't happen all the time. Go there with your team, shut your mouth about your politics, shake hands with the president, and be a gentle person, a gentleman or gentlewoman.
Hey, you know what's? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was going to say, that said, that the team is engaged right now in a lawsuit. Many of the members of the team signed on to a lawsuit against FIFA, which is the governing body or the body that controls this World Cup and pays men bonuses for winning the World Cup that are much more substantial than female ones. And I think that's awesome, too. Go after them. If there's money to be had and you can have it, go ahead. I think that FIFA is going to make the argument that the audience was bigger, but women's soccer has come, or football, I'm sorry, women's football has come a long way in a short period of time. And it took the NFL practically 100 years to become part of the American consciousness, the way women's soccer has quickly become in several decades. I guess you might dream that there would be better sorts of people playing sports than exist elsewhere in the media, but that's probably unrealistic. And I hope Megan is able to swallow her pride for a moment and enjoy the glory and the attention that is due her and her teammates.
Yeah. Oh, with this
I'd like to point out.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out that this comment on the part of Megan is just yet another data point that just conclusively proves that soccer is just straight up communism, and that this whole thing is just gone far enough.
Yeah,
Well,
they
Bill-
did say, like against France, Megan scored 2 goals, which is virtually unheard of in the sport. So it was like,
Well, yeah, Scott, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I want to give full credit to this amazing women's Team USA.
Yeah.
In that game, I think it was against Thailand, when they scored 13 goals. There are men's teams that can go 7, 8, 9 seasons without scoring 13 goals total. So that is
in the season.
in aggregate. That's just it's an incredible thing.
Something's about to happen. Something is about to happen. Something. Oh no, nothing
no,
happened.
That's right.
Something's about. Oh no, nothing happened.
I saw the highlights of the game against France, and France has this woman on the team who's like 17 feet tall, and they had this setup shot. And I don't know anything about soccer, so I don't know what this is called. But there's this shot where basically the ball is sitting still on the ground. Everybody's trying to block the goal area or trying to get the ball into the goal. And there's this whole mob of women, and then there's this one person who's like head and shoulders above everybody else. And the person kicking the ball kicks it right at the head of her teammate, who then uses her head to knock it straight into the goal. And I was thinking, man, that's gotta sting. What a stupid sport. But,
I just have to throw this in because it's a kind of idea that I will immediately forget. But it occurred to me how you could actually score many more points in soccer than you actually do. And what I would recommend if Team USA wants to really be serious about this, well, certainly if the men's team comes up in the next World Cup, I would take the entire soccer team and I'd put them in a line. I'd put them in a line and have them shoulder to shoulder. I'd have the ball kicked back to one guy who's hanging a little bit further back. Then I'd have the 2 guys on the far end of the line run like hell down towards the far end where the opposition goalie is. The guy comes back here. He's juggling. All the other guys are coming forward trying to get the ball from him. And just in the nick of time, he kicks one, gives one all the way down the field, gets it to one of these guys who's just beat the defender out there, pops it into the goal, and the next thing you know, we're champions of the world.
You know what? If they could throw the ball, that might speed things up even more.
I think some kind of strategy would help soccer
I think
enormously.
Bill has just turned it into a strategy game, which it was never meant to be.
Indeed. All right. Next headline. Oh, this one's for Bill. It just really ethically scares me. Is a quote, I think, from some scientist who says, "Caution urged as scientists look to create human-monkey chimeras."
Yes.
Now, this is
I almost did that story.
Yeah, this is. I thought you might. I'm glad you didn't, because I wanted to do it. I am all for medical progress, animal testing. Yeah, bring it on. Put shampoo in their eyes. I kid. I don't want to do that. But all of this stuff I'm in favor of as long as it's done humanely. But you start mixing monkey and human genes, and I start getting a little wiggy, don't you?
I get wiggy too, and this was talk about adding some elements of human brain to monkeys in order to isolate Alzheimer's and accelerate research into that. And as a person whose mother's had Alzheimer's for 12 or 15 years now, I'm here to tell you it's the worst disease on the planet. It's just unbearable. With that said, I think this is a terrible idea. But I'll tell you what is interesting about this is in that article that you mentioned, Steve. They also mentioned the idea that there's some of this same kind of thing going on with pigs to make the ability to get pig organs more transplantable into humans. Their body size and everything were actually pretty similar. Somebody once called, I think cannibals called men the vertical pig or something like that. I don't know. Who knows? Tastes like pork to me.
That
in
was
any
my
event,
nickname in high school.
That's right, vertical pig. And but I find it interesting that doesn't bother me nearly as much as this does, and I'm not entirely sure why. It obviously has something to do with the fact that when you're messing with mind, the intellect, you're talking about this essential aspect of humanity. And I think when I first read that story, the visceral horror that it generated in me was somehow, and I know this isn't what they were talking about, but what really got me was the idea that would make these monkeys intelligent enough to understand what was happening to them.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, that somehow now we're making these creatures specifically for our own benefit, and yet the situation with the pigs didn't bother me much. Maybe it's because just pigs have, just terrible PR agency. And Quentin Tarantino pretty much summed that up, pretty succinctly. He said that had better be one blank and charming pig.
Right.
And anyway, no, I look. I think the days of experimenting on animals are over and should be over. One of the things I was thinking about just yesterday, in terms of, I see a lot of things in society that are worse than they used to be. But the one thing that is immeasurably better is our perception of animals and our treatment of animals is just insanely, immeasurably better. I was at a place in Malibu, and they had a wall there dedicated to whaling, and just this head of a gray whale just been chopped off. They're about to pitch it into the ocean, And I thought, I'm very glad that we don't. That kicking dogs is not considered, a routine sport, and tying, or scalding cats or any of this other stuff. So, I think, especially with the advent of supercomputers, I think it's probably time for us to stop doing this.
Yeah, I just there's something about messing with brains. I don't know. I don't want to reach a point where I have to say, I for one welcome our new human hybrid monkey overlords, and it's just no. Don't want to have to go there. No Planet of the Apes for me. All right, Scott.
Now, if they're
last
experimenting
headline.
on ways to save your hair. Now, in that case, I'd be totally willing to have entire populations of humans driven into the abattoir or whatever it takes.
Oh, absolutely.
I just want to make that clear.
Yeah. All right, Scott, last headline. Nevada becomes first state to ban employers from refusing to hire job applicants who fail marijuana tests. Now, I've been pro-legalization or at least decriminalization for as far back as I can remember, but that said, you still want to have some social norms preventing people from absolutely destroying themselves. What the hell's Nevada thinking here?
I think what you just really said was that Nevada just passed a law that said when an employer refuses to hire somebody, they need to make up a good reason that has nothing to do with marijuana.
Yeah, well said.
How easy is it to not hire somebody? I mean, and like,
Especially a pothead.
That's right. It's like, and who's going to make that case? Look, I know that two other guys walked in there at the same time as I did. We both went through the same process. I was frankly a bit buzzed, and I think that's what hurt me, and I am bringing a class action lawsuit against these people because I deserve to work in a place where safety is so important that there's a federal agency that monitors it and levies fines against my employer. Yeah, I think that I'm a kind of a much more extreme on this kind of thing. I think that employers should be free to tell people that they need to get their hair cut or their beard shaved if they want to work here. I don't want to go into any food place and see a guy with a big beard hanging down who's dangling it over my food. I want the hair contained and groomed neatly. If I'm going to eat at these places, So I am totally fine with saying I don't want inebriated people in my employ. In fact, we have regular things at my other full-time job where they talk about the dangers of prescription drug addiction and stuff like that. Well, so while you're giving messages that are essentially handed down through the government, through corporations, to individuals in their workplace, and now you're saying, oh, well, we can't discriminate against somebody who's a doper, but we will then subject them to all kinds of measures to make sure that they're not abusing the drugs that their doctor gave them because they had a pain in their leg.
I'd just like to modify Scott's earlier thing by saying that person in question actually should be filing a class action lawsuit against whatever company it was that he accidentally went into to get the wrong job application filled out. I know I wasn't supposed to be here. I know I was supposed to be at another building, but nevertheless,
that's right.
I've been discriminated against.
Indeed. All right, last one, and this is this one actually is a little more than a headline because Joe Scarborough, man, that guy talks and he shouldn't.
There's a lot of that going around.
The headline, I think this is from The Hill, says Scarborough apologizes for disaster of 2020 Democratic debate on MSNBC. He also criticized the Democratic candidates for adopting a slate of progressive policy platforms, including decriminalizing border crossings and providing health insurance through a public option, blah, 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 to undocumented immigrants, blah, 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 stupid stuff. He said, it was a bad sign for me as someone who desperately wants to see Donald Trump taken out of office. Well, listen, you go to war with the army you have, Joe. This is the army you have. This is it. This is what you've got. And, just as sort of a broader message to the hardcore never-Trumpers who are still peddling conservatism and want to see any one of this batch of far-left radical Democrats elected president in 2020. You people are so far off your rockers. It's just, I don't have any more words left. I hear Joe complain about this class of Democratic contenders that he helped to enable. Shut up, Joe. Best thing for you. I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott. This has been your members-sponsored lightning round of Right Angle. If you like what you see, please become a member yourself. Click over to BillWhittle.com. We would love to have you on board as one of our producers. So do that right now. We'll wait here. We'll see you next week. Bye.